Hi everybody, I hope you can all hear me. Welcome. We're going to be starting off in a couple of minutes. Just thought I'll let you know that we are recording this session and you are all on mute at the moment. If you've got, and apologies now if you hear my dogs barking occasionally, but this is what the new world of Zoom is going to be. Yeah, so Evan, can you just send me a chat just to make sure that everything is working and you guys can all hear me? That would be great, just to confirm. Yep. Excellent. Thank you. You can hear me. Fantastic. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the IIBA, and loud and clear. That's great. Yeah, so it is now 17:59. Making sure that everything's respectable. Yeah, so welcome. So yeah, so IIBA Australia chapter, Adelaide branch is hosting tonight. So I have put there all the starting times. I hope I got those all right. I worked it up on the world time. So yes, so let's kick off. We are recording just as a reminder for those. Okay. Share. Okay, first of all, we're going to acknowledge our country. So the Australian chapter, Adelaide branch, acknowledges the traditional owners of the country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. Adelaide branch acknowledges the Kaurna people, and we pay respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Very important piece of knowledge. So this is a little bit about the Adelaide branch. Myself, Linda Field, I'm the current chair, which I'll be stepping down this month. And as I have now been elected to the national board, which is really great and very exciting. So we do have somebody who is going to be stepping up into that position, and that will be announced shortly. We also, events and marketing, so all the messages that you've been receiving for the past 6 months about all of these national events, and a lot to do with the BA PD, BA week. It's been done by Anne-Marie from Adelaide. Ben has been looking after our education for the past 6 months, and he is also stepping down, and George will be taking over. We are looking for volunteers. We're always looking for volunteers. And if you're interested, please email at adelaidechair@australia.iiba.org. Fantastic. Oh, we did it twice. All right, page down. Here we go. Okay, just a quick summary of review for the what's happened in Adelaide this year. That is an extraordinary year. We've commenced the mentoring. But we do need to focus it a bit more and get some more marketing out there. We have a couple of people who've actually volunteered to be mentors and a couple of people being mentees. We're going to have a dedicated person on not only at the national level, but also locally in Adelaide looking after the mentoring program. So if you're interested in that, please send me an email. Members, we've had a number of members, lapse mainly due to COVID, and we're hoping to get, to increase that in the new year. We have seen a dramatic increase in certifications, especially IIBA and Agile, which is great. So you guys have been using your downtime quite well, which is fantastic. Get those certifications that helps to differentiate you in the market. We've been doing a little bit of experimentation. We've had 4 BA bites, and then we're some small sessions that we did in the early hours of the morning for some people who are looking for work out of BA, out of COVID. We might continue that on in the new year in a cafe style type environment. Watch out for news about that. We also piloted, which is just finished off, a study group in the data space. There are some interesting and great feedback that we received, and we'll incorporate that, and we will be releasing some study groups on the data next year. Also in study groups, we introduced the Agile study groups. We did 3 of them this year, which was fantastic, really well received. I did the first one, which was fantastic, and then we went online after that. We're the first ones in Adelaide to do an online study group, which was really great because not only did we have people from all across the country, including Tasmania, involved, but we also had a lot of regional participation as well, who would normally be able to attend. It's something that I'm quite passionate about, that we continue to do some online study groups next year, so people who are in the regional areas or working parents would be able to attend. And we also did 2 BAPOC study groups as well. Pre-COVID, we did a joint event with the Adelaide Enterprise Architects, which I think went quite well. It was in a pub, it was great. We got to have drinks, we got to talk to people. And we hosted 2 national online events. This is our second one here. We also got to have another face-to-face event, the Adelaide Connect 4.0. We were sponsors for that, and we were on the organizing committee. For the BA week, we had 5 Adelaide-based speakers, which was great. And then also for next year, we've actually, for 2021, have booked the Adelaide Oval to have a face-to-face event, which is very exciting. And we've already got some sponsorship being negotiated right now for next year, which will be really good. And in terms of volunteers, yeah, so welcoming George, who's going to be taking out the education portfolio, and Garth joined our study group as a facilitator. I'd just like to make a big shout out to Evan and Cliff, who have been our facilitators for the Agile group, and they are extraordinary. And as a result of that, we've had fantastic feedback. So well organized and full of enthusiasm, and they are the South Australian Volunteers of the Year. So thank you very much for Evan and Cliff. So we're going to do this, and this actually means clapping hands in Auslan. There you go. So Adelaide Connect, that was one of the big events we actually had. That was about 2 weeks ago. We actually had it live in person. Of course, that day we actually started going to lockdown. We did lose a number of attendees, but it was a still very well attended event with over 80 people attending and fantastic participation from the likes of ASG and AWS and various other sponsors, including the IIBA. Just have to acknowledge Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie has won a global award for volunteers for the Asia Pacific area. You know, she's done a fantastic job for Adelaide branch and helping reinvigorating it, and also for the Australian chapter as well. Anne-Marie will be going and joining the dark side of PMI, which is great for her because that's her passion, and we wish her all of the best. So thank you, Anne-Marie. So just let you know that the IIBA is on YouTube, and all of the fortnightly events are on there. So please have a look up for that. Also for the BAP week, there's also links to that as well. This session is being recorded, so you'll be able to access that as well. Tonight, if you have any questions or answers versus chat, so don't forget, if you want to put in a chat in there, or you got a QA, please leave a message there, and the ones that get the most likes will get a gift tonight. So we have some online vouchers that we will email to you. So just to let you know that we promote events in book through Eventbrite, which I'm sure you guys are aware of that. And just to remember to actually follow the IIBA Australia, and you'll get all notifications when those actually come up. So process pioneers, process management top 5 takeaways. So I first found out about process pioneers when Daniel contacted me asking me if I could, if I wanted to be interviewed, and this was during lockdown. And all about process and where we're actually up to with processes. And he actually interviewed 30 odd people, not only within Australia, but internationally as well. And they are all available on Spotify, and he'll also provide you other details. So he's now going to be providing his top 5 takeaways from all of those interviews. So please welcome the very handsome, although I've never met him in person, but spoken to him many times, Daniel Rayner from GB Tech Asia Pacific. So I am now sharing my screen, and you can take over now, Daniel.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that introduction, Linda. I will share my screen, and hopefully technology will work for us this evening.
Yeah.
Okay, and great. You can all hear me and see my screen?
Yes, indeed.
Yep, okay, perfect. Well, I will get into it then. So I've just got a couple of things here before I get into it. If you've got a pen and paper or a notepad, or you want to take notes, I'd encourage you to do so. I'm putting on this presentation hoping that you can take away at least one nugget that you can sort of put into action. So if you've got something to jot down some notes, that would be great. And also, as Linda mentioned, if you've got any questions, by all means, please pop them into the chat, and I'd be more than happy to answer them as we go. But yeah, I just want to thank everyone for taking the time out of your evening to join me, or wherever you're tuning in from, for my presentation on my top 5 takeaways from Process Pioneers. Now, I want to apologize for the lack of creativity in my heading. When I was, asked to come up with that heading, I must have had a foggy day or in the head or something. But I can assure you that the rest of my presentation will be far more interesting and creative than my heading, or at least I hope. My name is Daniel Rayner. I'm the Managing Director of GB Tech Asia Pacific. And GB Tech, we're a software solution provider that has a number of different products around business process management, including process modeling, process execution, and process mining. And I just want to thank the IIBA for giving me this opportunity to present to you this evening. I think Anne-Marie was saying earlier that there's been 15 of these sessions, these online sessions this year. So I feel really privileged to be able to have one of those spots. But to get into my presentation, I want to take you on a bit of a journey, take you on a bit of a story this evening that dates back to July of 2019, where I was presented with a carrot, or an opportunity, you could call it. And this carrot, it had me fly to Germany and meet the team at GB Tech, and to talk with them about joining their team. And what we're looking at here is our head office in Germany, which is in Bochum, looking quite ominous there. But I had this opportunity presented to me, and as you can imagine, my mum was very proud of me for that. And I decided to accept that challenge. And before I knew it, I was redeployed back to Asia Pacific, or more specifically, Brisbane, Australia, which is where I am from, if you can't tell by my heavily Australian accent, and to start GB Tech Asia Pacific. Now, this is going back into the early days, me in my little home office there, getting started, trying to build momentum. Just kidding, that's Jeff Bezos with the beginning of Amazon.com, but, something similar. And in starting a subsidiary in, a different geographical location to the mothership that is in Germany, it required me to, start a number of conversations with different people. I felt like that was a good place to start. In Germany, when we're talking about process management, they have quite a process-centric way of looking at things. And, through many of the organizations throughout Europe, BPM is high on their radar, high on their priority list. But, coming to a different geographical location, I couldn't just assume that things would be exactly the same. So I needed to have conversations with different people. I needed to have quite a few conversations. In fact, I needed to have many different conversations with different people in different organizations to try and get an understanding of what is the business process management landscape like here in Australia? What are the challenges that organizations are facing? What are their problems? What are their pain points? And what are they hoping to achieve? And what is the culture here? What is the general culture here? And there was one main question, and I wasn't asking this question to the people that I was talking to, but this was the question that was floating around in the back of my head, was why would anyone want our product or any of our products? And I just want to stop there and say this evening it's not a sales presentation. I'm not going to be doing a product demonstration or anything like that. It's merely part of the story. But going back to having all of those different conversations with these different people, and these different people, I'm talking about, business process management practitioners or process specialists or BPM consultants or, even senior management, senior leadership, that at exec level, if they have an appetite or an awareness of what BPM can do for an organization. And it was in these conversations where I noticed there were generally one of three responses when I was talking to these people. The first one being, we don't manage or improve our business processes for a number of reasons for XYZ. Number two, we tried to manage our business processes, but we don't do that anymore. Whether it's because, the culture or the mindset, or they didn't see any value from it because they didn't implement it effectively, whatever it was for XYZ, we don't do that anymore. Number three, we effectively manage and improve our business processes. Now, I obviously have shortened these responses. I wasn't hearing these same lines over and over again, but this was the general gist that I was getting back from these people. And it was particularly this third group of people that I was particularly interested in, and I would learn a lot from, because these are people, BPM practitioners, that within their organizations would be day in, day out, putting process management practices in place, I guess you could say. They were making mistakes, they were learning big lessons, but they were seeing value, they were reaping the reward, they were seeing the fruit that could come from effectively managing your business processes. And that was absolute gold. What I was learning from these people was very insightful, and it was a great contrast, knowing, okay, what's going on over in Europe, and how do Australian organizations approach BPM. Now, the first two categories, the ones that weren't really doing anything relating to BPM in their organization, for some of them, or for quite a few of the people I'd talked to, they still had an appetite for a BPM pizza, as I like to call it, everything that makes up business process management. But for whatever it was, whether it was the culture of the organization, whether it was the mindset in the organization, whether it was they already tried it 2-3 years ago, they didn't implement it effectively, so they didn't see any value in it. They didn't get, senior leadership buy-in, that executive level buy-in. And so they were, forced to spend their time elsewhere. But I could through these conversations, I could still see that there was an appetite for business process management. But it was with that third group, the third group that were putting BPM into practice and gleaning a lot from that work that they were doing. It was in those conversations where I had these moments. I was like, I wish I had a video camera on me right now, so I could document this conversation, because, or a microphone. I wish I had a microphone so I could at least capture the words that you're saying, because this stuff is gold. And, what you're saying here, it's going to be helpful to a number of people. As you're talking, a number of people are coming to my mind that, like, oh, what you're saying the solution that you're talking about, or the problem that you've overcome, the challenge that you've faced. I already know a few people that are on the other side of that challenge, of that problem within their organization. They could actually glean or learn a lot from you. There's a number of people that could learn a lot from you. In fact, there's quite a few people that could learn from what you're saying. In fact, there are many people that are going to glean a lot from the work that you've put into practice and the results that you've gleaned from it. And so that's where I had this idea that what if, as I was saying before, what if I could capture this? What if I could document these stories and these journeys and these experiences and be able to present them in a sort of a collaborative educational hub where people could come together and learn from one another. And that's where I came up with the idea of Process Pioneers, which is powered by GBTech. Now, Process Pioneers is the show that takes a deep dive into the minds of decision makers, key influencers, and process experts who are pioneering the world of everything process. And if you've seen any of the episodes, you would have heard that line before, because it basically kicks off every episode we do. You'll hear my voice saying that exact introduction. And I really want to bring it back to, I really want people to understand when you're listening to these episodes, we're going to be listening to BPM practitioners, process practitioners, people that are putting BPM into practice day in and day out in their organizations. And sure, they may have made mistakes, but the biggest lessons that you can learn come from your mistakes. And we're going to be learning from these people who are further along the BPM journey there than where we are. And I'm just one person, and so when I interview everyone I interview, they've all got their own unique perspective, their unique angle, their unique story and experiences. And I think that's where probably a lot of the value in this series has come from, is being able to listen to a story, be like, yes, I think that will work for me. Listen to another interview being like, oh, that's very interesting, but I don't think our organization is in a similar place to where they are. And so that's the beauty of getting such a diverse range of insight and experiences. And so that's really been great. Now, as Linda mentioned just before, the podcast series, it's on Spotify. It's on a number of different platforms like YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. We've tried to put it out there just to try and see, okay, where are the process lovers, the process champions, the process practitioners, and where do they like to consume their content? So what we're seeing here is YouTube, and we've captured just about 40 episodes to date now. And as I was saying, they've all got a heading that I've assigned to them, and they've all got a very different story, very different experiences. We're not looking at theory here. We're not looking at things like written down in books, which is good and serves a purpose. We're listening to people that are daily putting this into practice, and we're learning from them. And, a number of the different episodes, like from Ant Raj from NRMA, making process sexy again. And in this episode, we talk about how to get that buy-in from the frontline employee, the ones that when you change the process, they're the ones that it's going to affect the most, because you're trying to change habit, you're trying to change culture, you're trying to change the job or the task that they've been doing for the last 3 months, 3 years, 10 years, however long. And so Ant talks about this idea of how can you make process sexy again, so it's attractive to these people. We sit down with Dan O'Neill, former Chief Process Officer at Commonwealth Bank. He talks about how process is everything. Every need that you meet, every value that you create, every experience that you deliver is through a process. And he says that in the interview, and talks about whether you realize it or not, whether you document your processes or not, whether you're managing them or improving them or not. When an organization is delivering value, you're following a process, regardless of how ad hoc it might be. Now, Marcello La Rosa, my interview with him on process mining paradigm shift. And I apologize for the typo in the heading there. I actually only realized a week after I released the episode, and it had got too many views that I was like, let's just leave it up there and it should be fine. So, but Marcello La Rosa, he talks about process mining and you know, the future of BPM, this idea of like traditionally discovering your business processes. You would, get a discovery workshop together. You'd bring key stakeholders into a room. You'd have a lot of conversations to try and understand what is the process. But, you know, it's a difficult thing when you bring 3 people into the room to understand what the process is and they're all disagreeing on like, no, this is what I do. This is how it actually gets done. And, you know, if there's a difference of opinion, Marcello talks about the future of BPM and in particular process mining and how it can actually use the data and the insights in the that are already in your existing systems to, I guess, re-engineer your processes so you can actually see what's going on. And then we also have, if it would load for me. Okay, so that slide is missing, but that's meant to be Roger Tregear, whom some of you may know. Roger talks about spreading process infection. And we had this conversation with Roger back, you know, at the height of COVID, or like, you know, in the early days of COVID. And we're talking about like flattening the curve of this COVID infection. And Roger's talking about process management and how we want to steepen that curve and we want to spread process infection. We want people to understand and grasp onto the value that BPM provides and run with that. And so that's what we talk about. So those are just a couple of just peek previews of a number of different of my favorite episodes of the series that I've done. And we've also got some great feedback from it as well. You know, we've had David email me, say, hey, Dan, you done an awesome job here. Well done. I listened to your podcast during some of your morning runs, available for a quick chat over FaceTime, Microsoft Teams. And I, of course, said, yes, Dave, I am. Another one on LinkedIn. What John talked about BPM is crystal clear. Thank you for constantly providing excellent videos. Thank you. That's great to hear. John really knows his stuff. And, you know, I'm not here like trying to toot my horn or blow my own trumpet or anything like that. What this feedback does for me though is like, yes, like this is working. The things this series that I've been trying to create, where honestly I speak probably 5-10% of the time because I'm interviewing the experts, I'm interviewing the professionals. I try and throw my 2 cents in where possible, but really it is about them. And getting this feedback is just really fantastic and encouraging to see. And not only that feedback, but I've also been, you know, hearing different people say how well, you know, how much it's been or how they've been connecting with different process individuals through the podcast series. There was one in particular a couple of days ago. I had another interview and the guest I was talking to, he was saying, yeah, like I've been watching a number of your episodes and I watched this one of your earlier ones. And I reached out to the guy you interviewed and because I resonated with a lot of what he was saying, and we organized a Zoom call and we chatted for, you know, well over an hour, just resonating with each other, sharing experiences and story. And, you know, I heard about that one, but there's probably a whole other range of people, connections that have been formed that I don't know about. And that's absolutely fine. But that's just really encouraging and exciting to see. That brings us to today, which I'm just going to, I see the chat is going off. I'm just going to pop that up so I can see some of the questions because I haven't been following that along. How do you subscribe to Process Pioneers? Just on YouTube. Great. Yeah. Do you, any of the podcast episodes interview BPM who work with external clients? Yes, we interview a number of different business process management consultants who work with a range of different organizations, if that's if I've answered that correctly. But that brings us to today, where I want to present to you my top 5 takeaways from Process Pioneers. And I'm just going to jump across just the program I'm using. I had to split up my presentation, but top 5 takeaways from Process Pioneers, and that's what I want to go through now. So my first takeaway from this series, and these takeaways, they're not just the ones that stood out to me, they're also the ones that were reoccurring, and they would come up in many different interviews. And, you know, I thought like, I got to jot that down. I got to take note of that because I just keep hearing the same thing. And they wouldn't say go small or go home, but I will get into what that actually means. So the problem is BPM initiatives run out of steam, or can run, or traditionally have run out of steam in different organizations. You know, and that can be for a number of reasons, whether the organization has tried to bite off more than they can chew, whether it's like resources or time or investment or whatever it might be, they try and do too much. And so the BPM project or initiative, it runs out of steam, and people lose motivation and they don't keep continuing with it. Another problem is no one understands why they are doing this. You know, if a BPM initiative is going on for so long and they're not seeing results and tangible like fruit from the work that they're doing, people, you know, are like, why the heck am I doing this work? What's it actually doing for the organization? And that's not just the executive team, that's the frontline employees that, you know, they are quite comfortable doing it the way they've always done it. So why are you making me change? I don't know what this is doing. The other problem being no one takes responsibility. You know, if no one takes responsibility of business process management or individual processes, then it's just going to fall in a heap. It's going to lose momentum. It's going to lose steam. If people are just passing that responsibility, passing that blame, no, that's not for me to handle. That's for Joe Blogs to manage. So I've got a number of solutions here, and all of everything I'm talking about today comes from the Process Pioneers series. So number one, start small. And Matushi Chowdhury, in my interview with her, she says, target the low-hanging fruit, start small projects, baby steps. Let's map the process this little bit. And once you reap the benefits from that, it makes a case for a bigger investment. And I think that's very powerful. It's very important point, is starting small, because the executive team, the senior leadership, they'll be watching on to be like, how long is this taking? What's the return going to be, and how long is this taking? You know, and even the people that are involved in these process improvements or these process changes, they're going to be like, you know, I was quite comfortable carrying out the process that I was doing. Why all the change now? And if you start too big, you're just going to scare people off. If you start small, people, and you show them like real tangible results that don't take months or years to sort of execute, then you're gonna reap that benefits, as Matushi talks about, and make a case for a bigger investment. Next solution: gain quicker wins. And I've got you know, I could say quick wins, but you know, you don't want to gain a quick win if you're cutting corners and you're doing a sloppy job. So quicker wins, you know, instead of taking years or months, potentially weeks. And Shruti Sood says, that's an approach that I've recently started adopting, which is to break things down into small, achievable wins to help foster that mindset. I think that's so important. You can really foster that mindset if you can show people, hey, we set out to improve this, or to make this change. This is the result. It took a matter of weeks or even a matter of days. You know, we're seeing real value here. And if you're encouraging the people around you and your team, and people are really looking on, being like, well, this is actually working, and maybe we should have a look at the processes in our area, in our business unit, in our department. And you know, there's one story comes to mind from a large Australian organization that had a very process-centric way of looking at everything. And before it was, you know, very heavily BPM driven, I think it's began in one specific department or project where there was an individual that was like, BPM works. I've seen it work in other organizations, and I think we can make it work here. I'm going to do it on a project level. I'm going to show my team how we can get huge wins from business process management, and we're going to prove that it works. And you know, after that project, they had the business unit looking on and then adopting BPM. They had the department looking on and adopting BPM, and then that got the attention of the executive team, and they were like, right, BPM is working. This department is thriving. These business units are doing really well because of their understanding and improving their business processes. We're going to take this enterprise wide, and this is going to do wonders for our organization. Build credibility. So Alexander Essen says, as soon as you increase the credibility of your team and what you are doing with BPM, you will have a higher chance of spreading this approach throughout the organization. And again, we're talking about trying to get, trying to spread it throughout the organization, trying to get that buy-in from the senior leadership, the middle management, the frontline employees. If you get that credibility through a small piece of work and you're able to effectively communicate the results from that, that's huge. That can be quite significant. The last one for this point on go small or go home is assign process owners. And our very own Linda Field here from the IIBA said, she asked a number of thought-provoking questions. Is this what my organization represents? Is this what we actually do? Is this what our objectives are? What are the things that we actually do, and who owns it? And I think that's such an important point to keep in mind. If you don't have anyone taking responsibility of a process, then nothing's going to happen. It's just going to sit there. It's not going to improve. It's not going to get any better. It's just going to collect dust. And so I think it's really important to assign process owners so that they can take on that responsibility and know that, hey, is this process hitting its KPIs? Is it actually doing what we set out to achieve? Are the people that are following the process, are they actually following the process, or are they saying they're following the process, but they're actually doing something completely different, or even something slightly different? So anyways, that's go small or go home. Point number 2 is executive buy-in. My second sort of takeaway from the series is how important it is to get executive buy-in. Problem: senior leadership don't see the value in BPM, not in all cases, but that is a problem. Senior leadership don't see the value. And so we need to try and get that executive buy-in. And that could be for a number of different reasons why they don't see the value. There's many things fighting for their attention, whether it's they're putting out fires or they're looking at other exciting opportunities. There are a lot of things on their plate, on their mind. Next point is they don't see how processes link to the overall strategy. So if you're talking about the lower level detail, they're going to be like, oh, but how does this tie into what the organization is doing with the vision of the organization? How does the process link to the strategy? And they can't see the return on investment. And that's a question which I mentioned earlier is, what's the return on investment, and what is the time frame? How long until I start seeing that return? A number of different solutions that have come from the series is find that C-level sponsor. Nassim Ahmed from Optus, or formerly from Optus, talks about you do an initial business case with your findings that project what can be improved in the short and long term. Put forward those items to senior management, and that's how you get the sponsorship. And again, a lot of these points will sort of cross over into one another, because we're talking about, starting with a small project. What can you do in the short term? What can you put forward to senior management? And if you can prove that value from a short-term piece of work, if I can put $1 in and get $2 out in regards to my return on investment, what if we scale that up? What's possible? Next solution, build a case for BPM. Dennis Aksenov says you should start talking with everybody to understand their needs, and that will help you build the perfect business case. And that's another very important point to, you've got to include people along for the journey. You've got to be talking to people, the executives, middle management, the frontline employees, the different people within the organization. What are their pain points? What are their problems? What are the challenges that they're currently facing? And you can't fix them all, or at least not straight away. But you're looking for what are the critical processes, and where are the biggest pains right now in this organization that has the potential to improve or change. Process supporting strategy, as we mentioned before, and Rajiv Mishra says, what's the vision again? Do you want to be competitive? Do you want to be efficient? And that's what keeps execs awake at night, right? And so, you got to get into the minds of the executive team. What are they thinking about? What are they concerned about? What are they worried about? What do they want to achieve? What do they want to make happen? And is BPM an appropriate solution for that? And if so, how do you communicate that to them? Last is start with cost savings. Now, cost savings, that's not the only value that you can, I guess, see from business process management, but it is a good a good place to start, because if there's something that's costing quite a lot, whether it's time or money, if you can make some small tweaks, small improvements, and you can show how you can save the organization significant costs, then that's an easy way, or a relatively easy way, to show the value. And Linda Field again says, we were able to reduce the process from 40 minutes down to 18, which from a cost savings perspective worked out to be multi-million dollars a year savings. And again, all of these quotes are from the interviews that I've done, and that's huge. You know, if you were able to cut a process in half from 40 down to 18, and it saved the organization multiple million dollars a year, that's going to be huge. You've proved your point right there, and you know before you know it, the executive team's going to be asking, what's the next critical process? Where else can we redeploy you so that you can look for these similar savings? And that's executive buy-in. Now, I'm just going to take a drink of water to soothe my throat. And I might have a quick squeeze at the chat just to see if there's anything. Okay, I might leave some of these questions to the end. I might just keep moving on. But my third takeaway is everyone is important. Problem: one person can't improve everything. You know, I've talked to different organizations, and there's one that comes to mind in particular, that she's in an organization of thousands of people, a huge retail chain. And she's the only one that has been tasked to understand and improve the processes. Obviously, it's not a huge priority there at that organization. And that is a huge job, you know, like she's wearing that many hats to try and understand, document, improve, optimize, change the mindset, change the culture, bring people along for the journey. There's actually so many things that she's been required to do. And so it's going to take a lifetime to get to see value from her efforts there. Not necessarily, but I think you understand what I'm saying is, like, everyone is important and you can't do everything by yourself. You don't always know what's going on. You know, let's take the same lady, for example, like she's not, can't be everywhere at once. She's not the frontline employee that's on the phones, talking to the customers, hearing their pain points, hearing their problems, understanding what's going wrong. She's not dealing with the suppliers and understanding how, like, wondering why this process doesn't seem to be working, or it seems to be, you know, really inefficient, and there could be a better way. She's not there, but there are people throughout the organization that are in those positions, that are seeing what's going on, that are seeing them and recognizing the pain points and the problems, and you know, maybe seeing them, but if they're not empowered to do anything about it, then those problems will continue to exist. The other thing is you will have to work together at some point anyways. If you want to improve a business process and change something, you know, that Bob's been doing for the last 5, 10, 15 years, you're going to have to work with Bob at some point to be like, hey, Bob, we found a better way of doing things. And, you know, if you're not empowering them or bringing Bob along for the journey, there could be some resistance and some objections there. So, you know, how do you bring Bob along for the journey, which we'll dive into? Solutions. So find process champions. And Ant Raj says, create process champions in each space. We have a champion for process improvement in the purchasing area. We have a champion in process improvement in the logistics area, and we work with those champions. And I think that's important to identify in your own organization, is who are the people, who are the process champions? And, you know, sometimes they're invisible in the sense that it may not be obvious, but the people that naturally think about process. You know, at least half of the conversations I've had with process pioneers, they don't have a formal qualification in business process management. It's just a mindset that they already have. It's a way that they already view the world. They're already looking for problems and pain points, and they're already identifying how they can improve that process. And so how can you identify and look for those people that resonate with the way you think, and how much you value processes, and how can you sort of start that conversation at least? Bring people along for the journey, which I touched on just before. Steve Marsh says, what we're trying to do is introduce a way in which we can bring people along a journey that it makes it much easier when we come to adopt and adapt the use of process management. And in that same example I was giving before, it's like, if you can empower Bob to be like, hey, Bob, like, what are you noticing with the work that you're doing? Like, what are the parts or the tasks that you find the most frustrating, or are the slowest for you, or the most tedious, or what are the parts of your job that you don't particularly enjoy? And if they're the ones that are identifying the problems, and they're the ones that are coming up with the solutions, that's going to be a whole lot easier to see that change come to pass. Like, if you improve that process, if you make a change to that process. Offer support. Now, Jeff Forsyth says, our job is to help and support process practitioners to do their job better each day by removing the barriers to success and progress. And I think that's really important. If everyone is important, and you need to bring as many people along for the journey as possible, so that they understand and recognize the value in the work that you're doing relating to process. You need to be able to communicate that, what we're doing, we're removing the barriers to success and progress for you. We're trying to make your job better and easier, more enjoyable. You want a workforce, you want employees to rock up to work every day excited and empowered to be there, because their role is evolving and changing and improving and getting better. That's what you want. And get quick wins to show value, which we have touched on previously. But Shruti Sud says, that's an approach I've recently started adopting, not being static and stuck to your frameworks, but breaking things down into smaller, achievable wins. And I'll move on from there because we have touched on that. And that is everyone is important. Now into continuous improvement. Problem: documenting processes don't add value in and of themselves. So, understanding your as-is processes is only one step. It is important to understand them. What's your baseline? Where are you starting from? So that you know what you need to do or how you can improve or change. Process documentation will just collect dust. If there's not a culture of continuous improvement, or how can we identify pain points and problems, you'll document all the business processes, and many organizations have done this. They'll take, a year, 2 years, 3 years, documenting the processes. They'll get to the end of it if they haven't lost motivation already, and their process documentation will just collect dust if there's no ongoing management or no ongoing improvement. Bob will look at the documentation and being like, I know that already. I've been doing that for the last 15, 20 years. Like, thanks for writing that down for me. I'll just keep getting back to what I've been doing. And the last one is there's no reason to improve. So if you're just documenting with no changes, then there's no reason for the process practitioners, the ones that are carrying out the work. There's no reason for them to change what they're doing if all you're doing is documenting what they're already doing. So a solution is identify a few critical processes. This ties into starting small, gaining quick wins. Identify a few critical processes, the processes that have big pain points. And Dan O'Neill says, for those who have BPM already established, it's a great mechanism to remind themselves what the purpose is, what the strategy is, what the critical process is that they need to protect. And then you put all of your focus into those. And It's that's pretty self-explanatory to identify. Okay, where are the processes that if we make some tweaks, it's going to have the biggest, the most significant impact or improvement to the business, and that's where we should begin. That's where we should invest our time, effort, and energy. Now, after you've identified those few critical processes, identify your pain points and any problems. Gilles Morin from Canada says most of the time they have a pain. The organization has a pain. I would say 75% of the time I come in, the organization has pains. They want to talk to you about their pain. And so I think that's really important. That's the language that you need to be using. You need to be understanding, like forget all the technical things. When you're talking to people that they care about the pains that they're going through and the problems that they're facing. So you need to understand, okay, you need to put yourselves into their shoes. What are they facing? And how can we provide relief to this pain, so to speak? Celebrate small wins. Okay, celebrate small wins. Jeff Forsyth says they're going to be looking for that return on investment. They'll want to know what are the wins that we should be expecting and how long should we be waiting. So when you do get those wins, celebrate them, communicate that to the executive team, communicate that to the different stakeholders involved in that process. Make sure people are aware that, like, you know, we set out to achieve this and this is what we achieved. This is the results. This is the fruit. And you know, this is an example, a small example of what else can be done within the organization in the various areas. Communicate the value and the return on investment. Zareen says, if I'm going to invest in this, what am I going to get out of this? Many times, many process folks fail to articulate that at a senior stakeholder level. And again, it does tie into a few of the other points that I've already made. So we'll just move on from there. And that's continuous improvement. And the last, or the fifth point that I took away from the Process Pioneers series, and again, this is one of the ones that kept reoccurring in almost all of the interviews that I conducted, was start with why. Why are we doing this? The problem is the purpose isn't understood. You know, no one understands why they need change. Barry's sitting there being like, what's the problem? I've been doing this ever since I've been working here, and this seems to be working perfectly fine. Why do we need to change? Why do we need anything any improvements, or why do we need to adapt what I've already been doing? And you know, if your organization isn't willing to adapt and improve and change and understand your processes and see if you can optimize them and improve them, then your competitor will, or someone else out there is going to. And you know, especially over the last 10 years, we've seen small startup companies disrupt entire industries because they've just put some effort and time into thinking about how can we do that process better. And we've got examples like your Ubers, where traditionally to order a taxi, you had to, you know, call. To be honest, taxis were before my time, before I graduated. But when I graduated, Uber was the thing for me. But for taxis, you call them up. Do you know where they are? Do you know how long they're going to take? And then, actually, no, I have been in a few taxis. When you jump into a taxi, you're looking at the money counter, and you're seeing that's all you're doing. You're watching that the entire trip to see how much this trip has cost. There's no fixed rate or anything like that. And someone out there decided, hey, there's probably a better way that this process could happen. And so Uber came along, and a number of different other competitors as well. And they said, look, let's have a smartphone, an app on a smartphone. So you don't need to call. You can book them in. You can see the flat fee before you step foot into the Uber. You can see how far away they are from you. You're not always looking out for where they are. You can just look at your app, and if they're still a couple of minutes away, you don't need to stress. You know, a huge change there. The effort to change outweighs the perceived value. So again, if people don't understand the why behind it, why are we doing this? How does this link to the overall strategy? How is this benefiting the business? They're going to be lazy. They're not going to be motivated to be a part of this change that you're trying to implement. And the attention gets redirected to other areas of the business with a clearer purpose. So, you know, there's a lot of, it's not just the executive team or the senior leadership that things are vying for their attention. It's everybody. Everyone's got full plates, and, you know, things are trying to grab your attention all day, every day. And so if there's not a clear why are we doing this? Why are we understanding our processes? Why are we improving our processes? Then, you know, attention will get redirected elsewhere. So a couple of solutions, again, from the Process Pioneers team, define the why behind BPM. And Peter Tortsis says business processes help those who are involved first and foremost. But before you put in the process, you need to form a why. And Peter talks about this idea of you need a very clear why. You need a very clear understanding, a purpose of why do we need to understand this process, and why should we go about improving that? What is that going to mean for the overall business? Ensure everyone is aligned. And Shagufa Azini says it's not just about getting the buy-in from the C-level executives. It's also about getting buy-in from the cross-functional team, or the various business units, or the frontline employees, or whoever it might be. You know, as Dan O'Neill said, process is in and through everything we do, and it involves everyone. And so if you're not getting that buy-in from different people, different stakeholders, you will probably face objection at some point. You probably will face objection, but how do you manage that? How do you handle that? Communicate clearly. So Bilwa Gulgul says processes change and processes evolve. And I think if they don't, they should evolve. Then how are we communicating that change to the employees? You know, you might understand the value in BPM and why you should manage and understand and improve your business processes, but does everyone else understand? Is it clear to them? And then communicate often, communicate clearly, communicate often. Peter Rayner says, if processes are not easily accessible and easily consumable, you are not able to articulate or communicate or convey them. And again, where are they documented? Are they easily, you know, consumable? Can people look at them and understand what you're trying to communicate? And that's my fifth point. Start with why. Now, just as a recap, just because we have flown through that relatively quickly, go small or go home was point number one. Point number two, getting that executive buy-in, that sponsorship from that senior leadership level. Number three, everyone is important. How can you leverage everyone in your organization, or, you know, not everyone, but who can you look at to leverage that are already experiencing the pain points and problems in the processes that are taking place? Continuous improvement, so important, not just to have processes documented sitting there collecting dust. And point number five is start with why. What's the why? What's the bigger purpose? Now, a disclaimer, after all of that, not everything may work for you and your organization. You know, every organization is of different sizes and different shapes. We'll have different requirements. We'll have a different culture. We'll have a different mindset. And, you know, you're going to be facing different challenges and objections. You're going to have different maturity levels in the different organizations wherever you find yourself. But if there is just one thing that you could take away from my talk today, that's a win for me. I hope that if you've been taking notes, I hope there's one thing that you've taken away from this that you're able to put into practice next year. And, you know, if today's session has been very quick and, you know, we've only scraped the surface of the interviews, by all means, feel free to go listen to some of those interviews, because we do dive into a little bit more detail. But I hope there's been at least one thing you've been able to take away from today. And now, talking about Process Pioneers, I just wanted to mention that we are on the lookout for our next guests. So leading up to Christmas, it's a busy time for everyone. We don't want to be taking up people's time over the break. So we're looking to book up a number of interviews so that will see us into the new year. So if you're interested in process, if you're involved in process in your organization, then I'd love the opportunity to interview you or be introduced to someone that you know. I'm looking for, you know, anyone that's involved in process, whether it's decision makers, key influencers, process experts, all things around process. That's who I'm looking for. If you know somebody, then please get in touch with me. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate you giving me your time to me this evening. My name is Daniel Rayner. Thanks for listening. And I'll pass that back to you, Linda.
Oh, thanks. Thank you very much, Daniel. That was just awesome. Now, everybody, I just want you to just, put your images back on. I want to see your beautiful faces. And I want you guys to just do like this. This is a congratulations, a thank you, well done. I think that's just absolutely brilliant. This is the silent clap. Yeah, thanks, Mario. I can see you doing that. Evan, come on, that's it. That's a big clap for you guys. I think that's almost a standing ovation. Here we go. We're now doing the Mexican way. That's it. Okay. All right, there's a few questions. Yeah, a few questions from the team there. So yeah, lots of great feedback. I just want to make sure that everybody can see that Daniel does have arms in this picture. So it looks like he's armless. So Daniel, you can wave your arms so people can see that. So that would be really good. Bit of comfort. Lots of great feedback. Great presentation. Fantastic presentation. Some of the questions that we've actually had. Lots of comments. Yep. I think just to let everybody know that the timings are from presentations for these national events. Yes, it is different for everybody because we're all in multiple time zones. Yep, okay, here we go. First question we had, all right, we had some people who had problems seeing you, but that's okay. Everything's been recorded. So you'll be able to see what Daniel presented. Question we have here, how do you describe process pioneers? Yeah, as Daniel mentioned, it's on YouTube, it's on Facebook, it's, there's also podcasts available, on, whatever that green circle is with all those little things you can download. So yes, various platforms, Spotify, etc. Do any of the podcasts,
like it's broken, it's painful.
the interviews, right, with consultants who work with external clients? I myself, I was one of those. I work with external clients, so that covers that. But there's a whole range of people who work internally and externally. Some people really like your photos and the samples that you actually gave, particularly the one with the baby with all the blue cake. I think that was really good. One of the questions here, Daniel, is how to identify and define the MVP for business process improvement.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that, I'll do my best to try and answer it. I think that, some of my guests that I've had on the show would be able to give a lot more insight into, how do you identify that MVP, minimal viable product? I'm assuming that's what you're referring to.
Right.
For business process improvement. And how do you identify where to begin? Because it could seem quite overwhelming. Like there are so many processes. Like where do you put your time, effort, and energy? And how do you identify that? And I think it's got to start with conversations and conversations that with people that maybe you've already built that rapport with, that will give you the time of day to answer your questions about, what are the pain points that you're facing? What are the problems that you're experiencing? There's a guy that I have a good relationship with that I talk to about what he's doing in his organization. And, his organization doesn't have a huge process-centric way of, going about the way they do things, but he does. And he's really trying to bring it into his organization there. And in some ways, he's got to go about it in a little bit of a stealthy way. He's got to do this after hours. He's got to talk to the people that he or has already built trust and rapport with to understand, okay, where is a critical process that we can put a bit of time, effort, and energy into and start to see some results and rewards. And there's another example of, I think I might have mentioned it earlier, but a large organization in Australia here where before they were a very BPM driven organization, there was one man that started BPM in his little project, in his little team, and he proved the value there in whatever they were working. It probably wasn't like enterprise-wide, it probably wasn't the most critical process, but it was what he had to work with. And he made it work within that project. They saw significant results. They delivered like under budget and on time and beyond expectations. And you know, the business unit saw that, recognized that, and saw, wow, like what can that do for the greater like department or the greater business unit? And then, you know, before long, the executive team took notice, and they were like, wow, like what you're doing in this small part of the organization, and you're seeing great results and value come from that. We want to adopt this enterprise-wide. And so I hope that gives a little bit more insight, but definitely some of the interviews that we talk that I've conducted, there are guys there that, you know, are either going through that right now, identifying those critical processes, where do you begin, or they've already been on that journey and they sort of share from that experience. So.
That's great, thank you. So one of the other questions we have here is, people who are currently working on the process can often tell you what is wrong, but they just don't have the authority or not empowered to fix the problems. They have their workarounds that help them to complete the actions that they are required to do. What do you suggest that they do?
Yeah, great question. And I think that's a great point. Like it really ties into the culture of the organization. If there isn't that environment or that, you know, the culture to be able to bring suggestions forward, then it's a tricky place. You know, it's a tricky position to be in. You know, I was talking to someone just yesterday, I think it was, where another interview I conducted, and you know, I was in an organization where they had a fantastic culture of being able to share things, and I really, you know, pursued that point because I thought that was a really important point they were making, was that, you know, we have a culture where even if you've just joined the team, you have the liberty or the space or the freedom to bring your own suggestions. If you recognize an area where things can improve, then by all means bring that forward, because, you know, you are, as you say, people currently working in the process can often tell you what is wrong. They're seeing it. They're the ones that are picking up the phone, that are talking to the customers, that are talking to the suppliers, that are carrying out the steps, that are looking at the process that they're following, being like, like this is taking 11 steps, 11 like, you know, tasks for me to do, but this process really should only be 7. Like, why do we do that, and that, you know? So it is so true. I think that I haven't really given an answer or a solution to that. But I think that, again, there needs to be a group of people. You need to find people that have that same mindset, that same thinking as you, so that you can encourage each other. Like literally, if you're in that position and you don't know who you can bring these suggestions to, find someone else that, you know, they're experiencing their own problems and facing their own challenges. And if you can bond over that, help each other out, see if you can make some improvements, then, you know, the more people you have that understand the value, the more powerful it's going to be when the wider business takes notice. So that's probably as much as I can say there.
Yeah. So somebody else has written here, most of the time people don't like change, right? And it's the same way they don't like when processes change. Could it be because people are insecure with the processes getting more automated, or if they're not skilled to do the processes in new ways?
Yes. And I think that's like, you know, it's, if you are involved in improving a process, changing a process, or automating a process, you've got to be aware of that. You know, that's how these people, like some of these process practitioners, will be feeling, and they'll be thinking about this. And the next point down, biggest fear is that process improvement or automation will mean I will lose my job. And there are a number of interviews where, you know, if I could add a sixth takeaway to the conversations, this point did come up quite a lot, was that, you know, encouraging people that improving processes is not going, we're not aiming to make you redundant or get rid of you or, put you out of a job. What we're trying to do is take away the stuff that you don't like to do, the tedious, repetitive tasks, and we're trying to improve your job, make it better, make it, empower you and make it more enjoyable for you, so that rocking up to work every day, you feel like you're part of something bigger than just yourself, and you're seeing the results, you're seeing the rewards, you're seeing the fruit from those changes or improvements. But I think a lot of it's is on the BPM practitioners, the ones that are implementing business process management to understand this, because you need to bring people along for the journey. Otherwise, you're just going to face resistance. You're going to face objections, and you're not going to see the value or get to the value as quickly as you were hoping.
There's a question here about some of your tips are Agile and UX flavored. Do you think that, process improvement can be done, in sprints and I'm going to slightly change the question a little bit and, be done in that way, or do you think it's really quite waterfall based?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Agile and process improvement can work hand in hand. I think, if I could redirect you to any interview, I think it was Dan O'Neill in his conversation where he does talk about how Agile and BPM can work hand in hand. That if you're, if you're delivering value for a stakeholder, you're going to be following a process. And whether you want to automate that process, if you're not optimizing it, automating a process is just going to get you down the wrong rabbit hole quicker, and so I think the same thing is whether you're automating it or not. If you're not understanding the process and looking for ways that it can be improved, then you could be missing out on opportunities and for efficiency, and if any hurdles or problems or challenges do come your way, you won't have any sort of baseline or grid to look to be like, okay, well, this is the process. Like, again, another example that comes to mind is this organization, large telecommunications company here in Australia. Their CEO is very is a very big sort of process champion and loves business process management. Huge telecommunications company, and he says if anyone comes to him with a problem in their area or whatever they're doing, the first thing he'll ask them is, what's the process? Do you understand the process? And if you don't, go away, understand the process, understand what's happening, then come back to me with the process. And if you give me the process, we'll be able to find the solution. And so I think it's, working in an agile manner, you want to be able to identify the problems and the pain points, and you want to point to specifically where they're occurring as quickly as possible. So, I'm not the biggest agile expert, but that's what I'd say there.
Right, and my dogs are barking, sorry. What would you recommend, Daniel, for somebody who's just starting off in their process journey as a process analyst? Very first day, they rock up, to a client site or, an internal team, and they're saying, okay, we've got a whole lot of problems, right? What would you suggest the first steps would be for that person?
Yeah, I think on site, obviously ask a lot of questions. I think that, you don't know what you don't know. And so you need to understand, where they are, what they're currently facing and experiencing, and where they want to be. And then your job is to understand, well, how can we get you from here and take you to there? So that's one thing I'd say. Another thing is, I think that, in the same way that this Process Pioneers series is trying to foster collaboration and connection and things like that, I'd also encourage you to use LinkedIn to reach out to different people, whether they are in a similar industry or not, and just strike up a conversation, and to learn from them. As I said, you can listen to the podcast series that I've done, but if you've got some very specific questions that you need answered for, how do I go about doing this? This is my specific scenario. Have you gone through that before? Reaching out to someone that you've either seen me interview or someone else on LinkedIn, connecting with them, asking for a bit of their time, half an hour or something. You've got a list of 10 questions. Can I throw them at you and get your response? I think that's another thing I would suggest. I'm a big believer in, if there is a place that you want to be or arrive or end up, like a goal, the best way of getting there is learning from those that are all already at or beyond where you want to be. And that, I guess that kind of goes for any area of life. But if I was in the shoes of that person, I would be asking a lot of questions internally, and then I would be going outside as well and looking for, you wouldn't call them mentors or anything, but just one-off conversations where you can really ask them the questions and get some good sort of practical answers. We did this, we faced this challenge, we overcame this challenge, and this was the result and the outcome.
Yeah. So there's a few questions about tools and what tools would you recommend to manage the process? It's not so much documenting, but actually manage the process. So anything in particular that you'd like to mention?
Yeah. So obviously the tools that I'm most familiar with are our own from GB Tech. And so, just as a really brief overview, as I mentioned at the start, we've got our process management solution, process design, BIC process design, BIC. That's where, all the documented processes are stored. That's where the improvement happens. That's where you optimize them. That's where you can govern your process, who owns the process, who's responsible for the process, making sure that we're following a specific standard, a specific notation, everyone's talking the same language, all of these different things. It also includes process architecture. So there's an area for the executive team to look at what's the overall process architecture, the process landscape, and how does that drill down into the multiple levels of your finer detailed processes. We've also got process execution, which then can take those processes that you've documented in BIC process design, bring them across to BIC process execution, and then that makes them executable. And so you can create different instances of each process depending on who you need to assign that process to. And it sends out reminders, and there's a task list and things like that. And then there's process mining as well. And process mining, as I mentioned earlier, is the idea is to take the data that's from your existing systems, your ERP systems, your Salesforce, the different systems that you're already running, that's already recording activities and time codes and things like that. It takes that data and then it re-engineers that and shows you what the process is. And it's actually a very interesting, it's a very exciting tool, I would say, because what it can show you is quite surprising to a lot of organizations. We've done a few proof of concepts and proof of values with this tool so far. And there was one particular organization where we just looked at one process, and we looked at 1,500 cases of this one process, 1,500 like customer journeys, if you wanted to call it that. And in the 1,500 cases that went through this one process, there were 800 different variants, 800 different ways that these people navigated through this process, which is amazing. A lot of them are outliers. A lot of them are just individuals that went on a random path, but they still went on that path. And even today, I had my own experience today where I'm talking to one of the big four banks, and I'm on a phone call with them, and the guy on the phone says, I tell him my request, and he says, I'll transfer you through to the person that will be able to resolve that for you. Sends me through. I have to explain it again to that person. Their response, oh, don't worry, I'll just forward you on to the person that will be able to resolve that tip for you. And that happened about 3 or 4 times where I had to re-explain myself. And I'm thinking, wow, like, you know, if process mining picked up what was happening right now, they would see this journey I'm going on where I'm on the phone far longer than I really should be, having a pretty terrible customer experience. You know, it wasn't enough for me to say goodbye to them. But again, it's just like, you know, we didn't talk much about customer experience so much in today's presentation. I had an interview yesterday where we just covered customer experience, and it was very insightful. But, you know, as a business, as an organization, you're delivering for the customer, you're delivering value to the customer. And are you making that experience enjoyable for them? So actually, so we're talking about tools. So so those are the 3 main tools in our product suite, and it's very scalable. So we have small councils that are just starting with process design, and then we have large sort of multinational organizations that start off with the complete suite, and they're discovering their processes automatically through process mining. They're putting it into process design. They're executing them through process execution. So, but yeah, if you do want to learn more about it, then by all means reach out and we can have a further conversation.
That's great. I think one of the biggest challenges, and there's a number of comments about, you know, how do you get people to change, you know, to follow what the process is. Any recommendations in getting people to change that mindset?
Yeah, I think you need to put yourself in their shoes as step one. You need to understand why would they want to change? How are they experiencing this process at the moment? And what are the pain points that they're experiencing? And, you know, because there really needs to be that motivation to change. If it's not going to make things easier or better or more enjoyable, or if the reward isn't significant enough, then you are going to have trouble making that change happen. And I think, as I mentioned a bit earlier, really bringing them along for that journey and asking them the questions, so that, you know, you're empowering them to find the problems and to solve the problems. You're not charging in being like, hey, Barry, like that process that you've been following, that sucks, and I've got a better way of doing it, and you just need to change now, even though you've been doing it for the last 10, 15 years. Like, you're not going to get Barry on your side. But I think if you sit down with them and you ask him questions, finding out like, well, what don't you like about your job? And do you think there is a way that it could be done better? Obviously, you're doing what you've been told to do, but I mean, you're the one that's doing the process. You're the one that's doing these tasks. You're the one that's talking to the customer. You're the one that's talking to the supplier. Like, you're seeing how well this process is working every day. So what do you think? And do you think there's an opportunity for change here? And if there is, if he does identify different things like, oh yeah, this is like, it's quite tedious and quite repetitive, and I don't understand why we do this step. And if he's making comments like that, then you can start asking questions, being like, well, what do you think the solution? Do you think there is a better way? Do you think, and I think if you empower someone like that, they'll take a lot more responsibility and ownership of it, especially when that change does take place. Because instead of Barry being forced to change because of your idea, you've empowered Barry to be like, actually, no, this is a problem. We need to change. This is the change that needs to take place. And I'm taking ownership of this change because I came up with it. And I think you're going to see much better results that way, I would say.
Well, thank you, Daniel. I think what a great session that we've had today, guys. What a treat. You know, we've had some fantastic discussion and questions. A very enthusiastic presenter. Love the slides. I was a bit worried when I saw so many there were. I'm thinking, oh, we're not going to get through. I love the fact with processes, you know, I'm a process geek. You know, I'm the first one to admit, yes, I've got a problem with process. But I think, you know, the fact that, you know, there's elements of change management. We talked about Agile, you know, customer experience, getting adoption, there's so much more to dig in. For everybody who's interested in finding out more, please, go and look at Process Pioneers, a fantastic wealth of information. Thank you, Daniel, for you and the team for all the work that you guys have done in that. So it's not just the interviewing, it's the preparing, the editing and uploading, etc. An incredible amount of work. Once again, thank you, Daniel. Everybody wave. And I'd like to just sign off. Thank everybody for coming in and on board. Really appreciate your time during this busy season. This is the last in the series for the IIBA for 2020. We will be, starting up again in February. Don't know as to what that's going to look like with, COVID and restrictions. We may be continuing on in this current format. It just all really depends on how things are going. Once again, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, everybody who participated. This will be uploaded and you will have access to the slides as well. Thank you for everybody who, for all your questions and your feedback and for, amusing me with your waves. I enjoyed that. Thank you once again, everybody, and Merry Christmas. Thank you, everybody. Signing off now. Cheers. Bye.